Welcome, all pregnant families, midwives, or birth workers. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week, we will be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. We are joined this week with Kanny and Al, who share the experience of a physiological birth from the perspective of a birthing mum and her partner. This was a team effort, and this story highlights the power and importance of both roles. Kanny also shares her experience of resisting perineal massage, and with the support of Al, she overcomes the resistance and gets to a place of appreciating the sensations. This had a significant influence on how she felt when her body was stretching to release her daughter. There's plenty of birth wisdom in this episode, so sit back and enjoy.
Before we begin, a note from our sponsor. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. Most of the stories you will hear through this podcast are graduates of the Transform Your Birth workshop held in Canberra. Our Transform Your Birth Today course is now available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, and includes all the wonderful wisdom of this course and live weekly catch-ups when you need it, with our host, Tracy. For a little taste, please accept our pregnancy gift offer, which contains free the first few lessons and some essential wisdom for pregnancy. The link can be found in these show notes or visit transformyourbirth.com.au. And now for the episode.
Welcome, everybody. It's another episode of the Transform Your Birth podcast. And with me today, we've got 3 people today. We've got lovely Kanny, her partner Al, and the gorgeous Willa, who's just lovely. She's been giving me the best smiles ever. And she's making her little self known as well. So we keep it real on the podcast and, we don't over edit. We like it to be as real and authentic as we can. So welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Okay. So how old's Willa now?
She's
12 and a half weeks.
12 weeks on Monday.
Right. So it's impressive that you can, line up to do a podcast at 12 weeks. That's wonderful. So tell us, Kanny, how are you feeling about your pregnancy and the prospect of giving birth? And what sort of preparation did you do?
I think the pregnancy itself was quite good. Like the first trimester, I would not have even known that I was pregnant, really. Didn't really have any symptoms or anything like that. I think I found it interesting that, the second trimester where they say, this is the easiest one to get through, was actually probably the most challenging one for me. I think this little one, I now know, likes to kick one of her legs in a certain direction, and it just kept jabbing me up under the ribs and in the fur and everything the whole time. So that was, I think as she got bigger, that just got a bit more intense.
Smiling. She knows the dog is.
Yeah. So, but I think overall, like, I was just really pleased with how the pregnancy went. Didn't have too many concerns. I think there were days where she would be really quiet and I'd kind of have a little bit of a, oh God, like, is she all right in there? But yeah, other than that, I think it was we were very blessed. I think it was quite easy going.
Kanny, did you feel nervous about birth?
I guess as nervous, as most people might be, just like with the prospect of, something that you've never been through before, and you have no idea what it's going to be like. In a previous life, I was a midwife myself, so I've seen a lot of birth, and I've, kind of seen the spectrum, that it can be from, very sort of spontaneous, low risk, just, very straightforward birthing to, some more challenging and intervention kind of birth experiences and stuff like that. So I think in a way that was a good thing, but also I think having seen, how it can go, that was probably a little bit in my head as well.
Yeah, of course. I get it's a tricky thing because your subconscious is wired to pick up on fears. And when you've seen it all, and midwives and doctors and anaesthetists, and they do see a lot of things that can happen, it's very hard to sort of move out of that space of the history and the experiences into learning to trust yourself and your response to birth. So what sort of prep did you do?
So the first thing that I did was I started doing yoga. And initially I was wanting to do it, I think, just as a way to keep sort of fit and active. And I ended up doing classes with Vedanta Nicholson in Oakland. And I think when I first started the class, it was a lot more based on, sort of relaxation and then a lot of breathing techniques. So I think when I first went, I was like, oh, this isn't what I was anticipating doing. But I think after the first class and first two classes, I was sort of like, no, this is what I need to do. And it was fantastic. I think having done that and just all of the mindfulness and just learning that breathing technique, and practicing that, making sure that I practiced it the whole way through my pregnancy, that I think was a real, one of the really big game changers in terms of my birth. It got me through. So that was amazing.
Yoga's a wonderful form of prep to do because as Kanny's telling us, it can teach you a lot of really good skills, and breathing is one of the top tools in the toolkit. But the other thing that can support our bodies to do is to release tension in the bodies, and a lot of the different postures and things. Our bodies naturally soften in labour with the hormone relaxin, but sometimes we need a bit of help to release some of that tension that gets built up in our nervous system, in our bodies, and can start to really open that and pave the way for our body having less resistance when it comes to labour. So I'm a great proponent and supporter of yoga. And even though a lot of people may not be attracted to it in pregnancy, it's a really beautiful form of preparation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What else did you do, Kanny?
So we came and did the Transform Your Birth weekend, which again, I think for both of us was quite a game changer. I know I certainly came out of that going, oh, I'm excited for this. I think I was really pumped for the experience and seeing what it would be like. I felt really empowered, I think, from doing that course. I think it was really great as well that there was so much emphasis put on the partners as well and their role, because, I think that was just fantastic. I think having Al there, and that really got me through as well.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Al about his experience of that. Before I do though, Kanny, what was it in that process of doing the course that helped you to unlock your midwife brain and step fully into the mother brain?
I think I'd always I'd known anyway, about, the interplay of hormones and keeping relaxed and everything like that. I think, but I probably hadn't put as much, thought or realize as much, I guess, just the power of the support of the partner. Yeah. Just being able to completely switch off. I think there was I think one thing that I had been most nervous about, I think, during the pregnancy about the birth was, if it ended up being an instrumental birth or something like that, and how I would cope and, all of that. And I think in the course, you provided two stories, and I think one of them, the real difference between them was just that support of the birth partner throughout it. And, even though somebody had a very, what you would think is a textbook labour, without that support, they sort of, I guess, had a bit of time, processing what had happened, whereas, another couple with that real support, something that might sound like it could be quite traumatic, but they felt so supported in that. And I think that was a real game changer for me, because it just made me go, this is okay. It doesn't matter if it goes this way. I've got Al there. I think that's all that matters, and I'll just get through it. And I think that was a real moment that I kind of just stopped worrying about the thing that I had been quite nervous about, I suppose. That really just triggered it for me, and I was like, good, we're fine.
Yeah, I think that's a real revelation for a lot of women, to realize that the birth itself is not just on your shoulders, it's actually on both of your shoulders, and you both have a really important role to play. And that can go a long way in releasing that build up of fear and tension of, how am I going to deal with this, and what if this happens, and what would I do? And when you feel like you're actually together in there, and he's got your back or she's got your back, depending on your partner, that can really change things. Al, how are you feeling before you did the course, and what sort of changes did you notice? What started to shift the way you thought about your role?
So it's been a busy couple of years, and so up until the course, it was I was doing my best to help support Ken and I guess sort of that nesting side of things. But I think the prospect of fatherhood and the birth was sort of still abstracted. It wasn't until that weekend course, I think, because it just created a bit of space and time to really think about it and really ponder it. And there's quite a lot of meditation during that course as well. And it's sort of, I think from that moment on, it really did centralize in my life, and it kind of reorientated things. So that was sort of the most important thing. And then the other things were sort of, I guess, secondary to that. And so it definitely gave me the right mindset going into that, and sort of the right focus as well. As Ken said, it's particularly empowering for partners as well, which I quite enjoy, because I think there's the feeling that you have quite a bit of responsibility as the birth partner to really support them. And there's quite a lot you can do, and like consequential things as well. So it was good to do the course, and I think that really, that was the beginning of the mindset, I think, to really focus on being there for Ken, and then the immediate aftermath as well, because it's straight into it. So.
Yeah. With it's lovely to hear you say that, because with the partners, it's so important that we get them on board. Their role is instrumental. They have the capacity to make her labour easier and shorter, or longer and harder. And that never happens on my watch, because I'm a great advocate for partners to really see how powerful and, as you said, consequential they can be on the actual process of that labour. And primarily it's because of their impact on her oxytocin release, the love hormone. And nobody can do that better in that room than a partner can, someone who loves her. And having love in the room for a mother absolutely holds beautiful sacred space for her to unlock and allow her body to work with the birth. So that's beautiful. We also do a lot of very practical stuff, don't we, Al? Like, you get a checklist of what to do, and by the way, what not to do. How'd you like that?
No, that was good. I think I've got a clinical background as well, so I've been there for some births and seen some, I guess, pretty shocking approaches from birth partners. So I definitely
you already knew what not to do then.
Yeah. Like just kind of entering the room and then immediately 180 and leaving. But no, I think it was good to, I guess the thing is, and it's similar to what Kanny was saying, so much of it is, it's interesting because it is the most important thing in your life. But then again, at the same time, it's something that you can't really, you can control how you respond to it and how you sort of feel and very much relaxing yourself. But I guess it's almost like getting out of your own mind a bit, or getting out of your own way, because you're kind of going with the flow, and that's the best thing you can do, I think. But it's such a strange approach, because you want to sort of control things, you want to make everything perfect as best you can, but really you're kind of, you're just allowing Mother Nature to take its course. I think the quote I remember you saying from the course, which I said to Kanny a couple of times, is, you're the product of generations of mothers who've managed this and who've given birth, and so you're sort of, you're continuing that tradition, a long line of women who've been through this before. So that I certainly took away from as well, in terms of, I guess, just calming ourselves and getting into that mindset as well. So that was the most important sort of takeaway, I think, was things I can do, certainly the phases and when to sort of to kind of step it up a bit with the support and stuff. But I mean, Kanny did an amazing job as well. So I don't feel I don't really had to do too much, but I was certainly there trying to support her as best as I can. But yeah, I was in awe of how Kanny did too.
Oh, that's nice to hear. So let's talk about the day that Willa decides to come in. How did it unfold for you, Kanny?
Well, we'd been kind of joking because we'd been to Wagga for the weekend and I wasn't quite term. And I'd said to Al, I'm like, what happens if something happens while we're in Wagga? Like, do we need to come back straight away? So we were kind of like, look, if anything kicks off, we'll just get in the car and make our way back to Canberra. And as it was fine. We made it back to Canberra at about 5:30 in the afternoon. And then Al was like, I'll just pop up to the gym and I'll go grab us some dinner and stuff. So I was just in bed and I just coughed and thought I'd wet myself. And I was like, oh, I think that might actually be my water's breaking. And so I got up and, sort of just changed a pad, went back to bed, laid down for a while because I thought if it pulls again and then I get up and it's still going, then yeah, this is it. And sure enough, it did. So I was like, okay, interesting. This is all happening now. So, and that was about 20 to 8. And Al got home and told him. And so I called the midwife and yeah, I think technically, as she said, she's like, how many weeks are you? And I said, I'll be 37 tomorrow. She's like, well, technically, yeah, premature rupture of membranes. She said, if you did come in now, we'd be having to look at antibiotics and, not being able to birth in the birth centre, which is, where we were going through. And so she was kind of like, how would you feel about just staying at home for a while and just seeing? And I'm like, absolutely. Don't want any of that to sort of happen. And I think that was just such a key thing because had we gone in then, I think it just would have completely changed the experience. And so, yeah, I think through that night, I just went to bed and slept for a while. It was about 2:30. And I woke up and I'd started having contractions and I was like, yep, great. This is all kicking off. This is fantastic. And yeah, just started doing the breathing while I was in bed, just the yoga breathing. And I think by about 4:30, it started to get more intense. And I came out into the lounge room and Al was out here on the lounge because I've been snoring so much still. So, so came out here.
No, it was sweet, melodious tones.
Good answer, Al.
That's it. So yeah, I just sort of was moving around in the lounge room for a while, and then I think it was probably about 5:45 in the morning, and I said down I think we need to call the midwife now. And we did, and yeah, I think in my head I was just like, oh, first baby, I'm going to get in and they'll tell me it's too early and to go home. But we got in and we didn't have any examinations because that was part of our birth plan. I didn't want any of those. And our midwife had the bath ready when we got there, and I think I was kind of like, oh, what if I'm not far along and it all just stops? And she was very much like, look, if it does, it does, and we'll just get out and manage it from there and just see how it goes. And because I think in my head I thought that it was all a bit erratic, just a bit irregular, and that I was slowing down. But afterwards I found out that no, it was just cracking on quite quickly. So yeah, I got into the bath and that was great. I found the heat and just the weightlessness of the water really helped. And I was just able to really like pretty much fall asleep between contractions. And it was just easy to sort of move around in there as well. So like just changing positions and things like that. I think it got to a point where I remember like in my head, I was kind of like, oh, this is getting a lot. Like, I don't know about this. And then I was kind of like, oh, actually, no, I think this might be transition. Like, this is a good thing. Like, you know, just go with it, and just kept breathing and, you know, was vocalizing more and stuff by that point as well. And
Al, can I just ask what you were doing in that part? Like, what was your role?
I was by the side of the bed, by the bath. So I basically would hold Kanny's hands and just reassure her, lots of sort of reassuring contact. Sometimes that wasn't needed, which was fine. But like during the contractions, especially, I think like my hands were there to kind of squeeze quite tightly when it was contracting. And then I sort of tried to use my hand to sort of prop up Ken's head in between contractions so she could kind of get a bit of rest. So I was sort of there basically by the side of the bath. Which, you know, was fine.
Yeah.
But like you said, I mean, I found the whole thing was pretty awe-inspiring, because just watching Can fully in control and I guess like mastering her pain and the breathing. The whole, I mean, I was sort of in awe the whole time. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. So pretty,
that's a great frame that you're holding her in, is in awe. One of the biggest fears a lot of partners have is seeing the woman that they love in pain. And that's certainly understandable, because, you know, when we see someone we love in pain, it's very difficult to be around and hold space for. But we shift the perspective of, no, it's not pain, it's power, even if it's painful. When you see a woman in labour, you're seeing a woman in the most powerful state you'll ever see a woman in. And it sounds like you were actually able to hold that space of being in awe of what you were seeing as.
Yeah, I got pretty emotional at points in time, because it was just, seeing Can in that way, I wasn't expecting it, and then when to sort of to see it and to be in that moment, there was a couple of times I sort of thought to myself, like, oh wow, like this is my wife kind of doing this, and like fully in control of everything that was happening. And I guess, like I said, the pain was there, but Kanny was sort of mastering it in the way that she could. I was there to provide support, but it's something that will always stay with me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How were you experiencing those sensations, Kanny? Can you describe how it was for you?
I had a bit of, like, I had some back pressure, which, it was the weirdest kind of thing. I was explaining, like, trying to explain it to someone not long ago, but it almost felt like a rubber band flicked. Like I could feel this like thunk, and I knew that it would be coming. And I just felt this, you know, tightening. I don't know how to describe it. It was just this real kind of tight sensation, I suppose, and a lot of pressure. And I don't think at any point, though, through, like, other than when I knew I had hit transition, where I was kind of like, this is intense, but I don't think at any moment throughout was I like, this was not manageable. It was just, we'll just get through this one, we'll just breathe. And I think because with the breathing as well, like, they didn't seem to last that long. But I think, you know, before we'd left home and Al was sort of timing them, they were going for like 40 seconds and then longer after that. But for me, I don't know, time just kind of disappeared a bit, and it was just like, oh, it's just a couple of breaths and then we're through it, and then I can rest. And I think that's all I kind of focused on, really. But it wasn't what I was expecting. And a lot more manageable than I think I had been expecting it.
That's interesting. Now, this is your first baby, and this is not what we often get told as women when we're having a baby. We just assume it's going to be really, really painful. The thing about labour sensations is that when you think of pain, you think of a sharp feeling, but like Kanny's describing, it's generally not a sharp feeling. It can feel more localized if the baby's pushing on your spine, and you can feel it in a very localized way, but typically it's a very broad feeling. And it's a big, powerful muscle called the uterus that's really contracting. And like any muscle working, it's more of a broad, wide sort of tightening, intense pressure type feeling. And yes, it can be painful, but it's not always painful. In fact, what Kanny's describing there is that she never found it until she hit transition, which is that real time of, wanting to get off the bus, which is really common. She found it really manageable, and that's not what we typically hear for first-time mothers, Kanny. What do you think you were doing that made the biggest difference to the way you experienced it?
Honestly, I think it was just the breathing. I think in my mind, I was like, because, what we always did, with yoga, we're always sort of talking about, getting the oxygen in and really sort of, I guess, getting that oxygen down to the uterus so that it can work as hard as it can. And then I think bringing in all of the thoughts from your course of just, the best thing you can do is just to stay relaxed and just let the hormones do what they can. And so I think I remember, like, whenever it would come, I'm like, all I have to do is just get as much oxygen to this as possible and it will be okay. And then I think, because that was the only thing that I was thinking and just visualizing, like before I knew it, the contraction was over. And I was like, I completely put it out of your mind, just rest. Don't think about the next one coming. It will be there when it's there, but just don't get too far ahead of yourself. And I think, I think that was the big thing, not thinking about, oh God, how many more of these are happening or it was just, that one is done. Now we rest, and that was it. And very much in the moment, I think.
Right here, right now. And your endorphins are designed to help you to do that. They give you an altered sense of time consciousness. And the way we interfere with that is if we get too caught in the how much longer do I have to keep going thinking, or any type of thinking that pulls her out of the zone. You said you were visualizing, Kanny. What were you visualizing?
I think just my uterus getting lots of blood and oxygen, which is weird. Not that I was actually like in my head picturing a uterus, but just that thought process, I think. That's what, I think, like, looking back, that's kind of the thing that was most forefront of my mind, was just, the more we breathe, the more oxygen we get, the better this is going to work, and we'll just get through it. And it seemed to work for me.
It's very similar. Sometimes I use the analogy of jogging. When you jog, if you're holding your breath, or if you're panting or doing anything like that, you can't jog for very long. But if you get your breath into a lovely long rhythm, and you breathe in for a count of whatever your count is, and breathe out for 3 or 4 steps, and then you breathe out for 3 or 4 steps when you're jogging, and you get into that lovely rhythm, you can just keep going. It gives you more stamina, and labor is very similar in that way. And what Kanny's describing there is, by harnessing the mind, having a positive mindset, and then using one of the biggest tools in the toolkit, which is your breathing, by oxygenating that uterus, giving that uterus lots of blood and oxygen, then it becomes less ischemic, or it doesn't cramp as much. Whereas when we're scared, the blood and oxygen supply go from the uterus into our arms and legs, because we go into fight flight, and we're actually starving our uterus of the valuable blood and oxygen that it needs to be able to work well and with less pain. So the more relaxed women are out of that fight flight mode, the more the uterus gets what it needs to do its job. Beautiful. So tell us about second stage, Kanny. How did that unfold?
So I felt like I was starting to get a bit of pressure. Like, down in my bottom and down lower and stuff like that. And I was like, this is good. This is great. We're all heading in the right direction. And
that's a good response to pressure in your bum.
And because I was like sort of on the knees in the bath at that point, and so I sort of examined myself and put my fingers there, and I could feel her head, and I was like, yeah, this is great. We know what we're doing. And so I think I just let my body just kind of do it, because at first I knew that I was sort of just having some involuntary pushes and stuff, but they weren't very effective. And I could even, like, in my own head, I was like going, nah, you're not doing this, that wasn't a very effective push. You've got to like hold your breath, push down when it comes and stuff like that, like when it was really strong. And it was honestly like the best feeling. I really loved it. Like, I think being able to do something with it was just great, and it felt really good. And I think I felt like I'd been pushing for a little bit, and I was kind of like, oh, she's not really moving. And we changed positions, and I don't know, there was just this moment, I think, where I just gave like this push, and then I could feel all of that stretching, because we've been doing the perineal massage and stuff like that. And I think that from that moment I was just like, yeah, we've got this is great, I can do this. And it was intense, but once it got to that point, I think it was only a few pushes really, until her head was out. And it was amazing, because I sort of just like I kept my hand there, and I just felt her head come down, and just sort of breathed through it, and was just kind of able to hold the perineum there and just guide the head out. And yeah, I think that was just such a cool experience as well, because I think it like the last thing that I wanted to do was just give this almighty push for the head, and then have I guess some real potential damage or anything down there. So I think having my hand there just really helped me guide that and gauge that, and I just was able to breathe it out. And yeah, it was just amazing. But I think like in terms of like other game changers, I think having done the perineal massage and stuff was just fantastic for me. Just because I felt like it really got me, like, as soon as that sensation started, it's like, okay, I know what this feels like. This is okay. Like, and this is what's meant to happen. And I think it also probably helped me just visualize everything, sort of just, I guess like just stretching and all of that, and just helping bring her down. And which was great, which it's funny because I think, when we'd done the perineal massage, like the first few times, I was actually like quite, like not, I don't know if terrified is the word, but it freaked me out. I was just like, oh my God, like I think I kept finding excuses not to do it. And I was very much just like, this is really intense. And if I can't even handle this, how am I going to handle having a baby come down? And, I think Al actually really changed that for me, because he was helping. And, I think he was like, look, let's just disregard what, because all the rules are like, oh, you do it for like 5 minutes, each day. He's like, let's forget about numbers. Let's forget about all of that. Like, and, we need to sort of create the right environment for it as well. And so even practicing that, we put on your relaxation, audio recordings. We, had some candles on, lit, and, he just really talked me through. And so I got into the headspace and did the yoga breathing and listened to the recording. And we didn't think about how long we were doing it for or how intense. And I think like over, the few weeks that we did that, like by the end, my threshold for being able to cope with that was just so much more. And so I think from going, between like, oh God, this is, I don't ever want to do this, to then really like just, I guess like, I don't know, getting used to it, I suppose. And then almost just like you get a bit kind of like, yeah, I've got this. And then I think, in the labor, when I started to feel that sensation, it was actually like really empowering and quite exciting for me, because I was like, nah, this is great. Everything is happening as it should. You've felt this before, you know what to expect, like this will be okay. And that was just such a game changer for me as well. And it didn't make me scared or anything about, her sort of coming through, or, worried about what it would feel like or anything like that, because I think I was kind of like, you've already done this. This is okay.
Wow. Oh, gosh, Kanny, I really appreciate you talking about this in such depth, because I've often found with women that it either works for them or that it doesn't, that either floats their boat or it doesn't. But I've never thought about helping women who do resist it to actually persevere a little bit, because what you're describing there is you had resistance and then you kept going, and it was so wise of Al to say, look, forget numbers, forget the instruction or the rule book, let's just work with this, to taking something that is unfamiliar into familiar, so that on the day of the birth there was absolutely no resistance and your body was able to, you could just step into those sensations and be okay with them.
Yeah.
It's also why I get very cranky when people tell women, oh, it's cool, and I won't even say the words because it creates images, but it's going to feel like, and they give a very graphic image of what that feels like, which then sets it up in the woman's mind. But perineal massage gives you the opportunity to overcome any sort of resistance to the actual act of opening and releasing your baby. That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I think, without Al having, you know, kind of talked me through that and going, like, you know, in all of the lead up, like that was just such an important thing, and I wouldn't have been able to probably keep persevering with it. It completely changed the way that I thought of it, and then it made me go, oh, I'm capable of a lot more than I thought that I was to start with, and that was like a lot, I think, of that down to just the fact that we're like, you know, throw out the rule book, just go with what your body, you know, is telling you, and you'll just work, you know, resistance to that. And it was just amazing. Yeah.
And your perineum was intact when she came?
No, I did have a second degree. But at that point, like, I think it was probably when like the rest of her body was born. But I, you know, didn't even know. Like, it was fine during the birth and all of that.
Was the quote immediately afterwards?
I think, like, I had her, and then I hadn't even had the placenta. I think she'd been out for like 2 seconds. I was like, that wasn't that bad. That was fine. I was like, this is great. So I think I was just so chuffed, like, by the whole experience. I couldn't have asked, I think, for me, for like just a better experience. And I think that was just the culmination of a lot of things going well for us, like from all the prep during pregnancy, from the prep in late pregnancy, having such a supportive midwife who was also very, you know, supporting us to avoid any intervention. I barely saw her, like, the whole thing. I think she kind of was tucked around the corner, and so Al and I were just very much left to ourselves in the bath, and it just helped really create that environment. I think that just everything kind of just fed into the next, and it just ended up being such an incredible experience. I was so pleased with it all.
And so tell us about what it was like when you met her. Who wants to go first? Go, Al. Well, what was it like when you met your little girl?
I think, like, I remember it quite vividly. So Kanny and I didn't know whether Willa was a girl or a boy. We'd left that as a mystery, and I'm glad we did, because it was kind of this nice thing to think sort of at the finish line. That said, though, I completely forgot about that part, to be honest, because I think
most people do. When the baby's born, they forget to look. It's so funny.
I think I was so focused on Can that, even I guess like Willa in a way was sort of this secondary thing. So in a weird way. But then when she was born, she sort of came out and was this little thing, and then sort of soon after, you know, the midwife's like, oh, what have we got? What have we got? I don't know why my brain went this way. Might have been the fact I got no sleep the night before, or just the general state of things. But I went, where's his Willie? Even though I'd sort of secretly been hoping for a girl. So it was a weird thing to think. But I remember thinking that. I'm like, oh, we've got a girl. And then, of course, my tears started going from there.
Where's his Willie?
I don't know why I thought, but then Kat was holding her in the bath, and I got very emotional. And then they handed her to me while Ken got out of the bath as well. So I was just holding this tiny little thing, still covered in vernix and stuff, and just kept kissing her on the forehead and cuddled her in, wrapped in a towel, and just that skin to skin as well. So, which unfortunately for her probably was like hugging a Brillo pad, but all the chest hair and stuff, she didn't seem to mind too much. And then
she doesn't know any different, darling. I bet she loved it.
And then Ken came out, and then we sort of then all hopped onto the bed, and as our sort of first moments as a family, it was really, it's funny. One of the photos, because I had by far the most tears, and so I'm holding her, and it looks like I'm the one that's given birth, because Ken's looking all fresh-faced and clear-eyed, everything like that, smiling, and then I'm in the background, red-eyed and looking exhausted with no shirt on, holding her. But
I used to find that as a doula, I'd take photos of the family, and the women are like, oh, they're looking fantastic, and the guys or the partners are looking shattered. You don't have the same hormones.
I think it was just joy and relief. It's that sort of
course.
Mum's fine, Will is fine, and I was just
Beautiful. And what about you, Kanny? What was that like?
I find it like a bit hard to remember, actually, like the actual moment. I think I just remember, I remember when her head, and just holding her head and being like, oh wow, this is actually happening. We're like one push away from having her. And then, when she came out and I brought her up and stuff like that, and I don't know, I think I was just kind of like, it's done. Great. There's a little human now. And
that wasn't so bad.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad. But I don't know, I think it was just so abstract, to think, she's ours, we have a daughter, and this is her. So I think it took me a little bit to for it to click. I think it was just so overwhelming at the time.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably, hours later, once, all the suturing had been done, everyone was out of the room, and we were just kind of left to our own devices a little bit, and you could actually just sit there and stare at her, and you're like, wow, she's here. This is crazy. And I think then it really registered. And I was just like, this is amazing. So I think a different experience to our but probably just because of everything going on. But
every time a baby lands, it's just a slightly different flavour for everyone, and it can take a bit of time. Some women's first response is to just kind of stare and go, well, thank God that's over, and and others get quite impacted and immediately, and everything in between. It's a very individual experience. So I always say to people, don't go in with expectations around how you're supposed to feel when baby lands. Just allow yourself to be in the moment and be okay with however you feel. But don't ever underestimate the power of bonding, because it's a biological necessity. Any issues with your placenta? Did that come okay?
Yeah, no, that was fine. I had it in the bath. So it was, I don't know what I expected with it. I think from being a midwife, I always just thought, this is you wouldn't feel it as much, but felt it more than I thought I would. Yeah. It was a bizarre thing. But no, that was all fine. So I think,
beautiful.
It just went very low risk, very straightforward. I think from where to go was 8 hours, and it was just, more than I thought it could be. So
very good. It's lovely to hear these sort of stories, because it's helpful and inspiring for other women to realise that birth is a process that's wired into us. Our body knows what to do. Sometimes women can have complex situations unfold, and we've got to be careful we don't create them as well. But it's beautiful to inspire other people listening to these types of stories. So, Kanny, what did you learn about yourself as a result of going through your pregnancy, your birth, and becoming a mum?
I think just that like, my body is just capable of so much. I think it's one of those things you always, think about having kids one day, but the birth part or the pregnancy is just the bit you gloss over and you go, oh, it'll just happen. And I think you don't like to think about it too much, but I think, so I'm surprised. I think that I don't know, looking back on it, you'd be like, I did that. I'd created a human and got through the labor and actually found it to be an incredible experience, which is not what I thought I'd ever see going through it.
Yeah.
And I think since, becoming a mother and stuff like that, you just, I don't know, you just look at her and you just think you are just the best thing to happen to us. She's just changes the way I think you kind of think about everything, and your priorities just shift massively, and just
it's a powerful transformation.
It is.
For sure. And now, what would you say about what you've learnt?
I
think you've learnt that you're a bit of a legend, Al. That's just me quietly.
No, there's definitely I went into this thinking that I have a lot of work to do in terms of keeping the, looking after the house, cooking meals, all that sort of stuff. Because I thought that going into this, I wanted really, all Ken had to do was just to relax and focus on that part. And then also straight after the birth, just focus on recovering and breastfeeding, and that everything else was sort of I could look after. So I think in that sense, it was definitely there's an empowerment part for the birth partners as well. Even prepping the birth bag, I was doing that months and then probably a little bit too early on in the process.
You're onto the logistics.
Yeah. That said, though, when I came back and Ken said, I think my waters are broken, I immediately thought all I need to do is grab that bag and we've got everything we need. And then whilst, during the actual birth itself, I kind of, because I packed it away and everything, I knew where everything in that was.
Yeah.
It's been a very empowering journey, and it continues to be. But it's watching Kanny give birth. I thought, I sort of remember at the time as well. I was like, wow, I don't know. It was not falling in love again, but it was falling in love even more than I had before, because of just seeing my wife do this was just, like I said, it's just amazing to sort of behold and to see how much just what Kanny could do. And then launching straight into feeding and parenting. And I remember you spoke of that. It's sort of you just go straight into it. But also that, you've evolved to do that as well. And I did find afterwards, it's you kind of do manage the sleep interruptions and everything else. I think there's times we both, would get frustrated and not really being too hard on ourselves as well. We've definitely, throughout the pregnancy and birth and afterwards, there's been times that we've leaned on each other quite a bit, and being able to do that has meant that it's we've kind of maintained our our closeness and our intimacy as well. That kind of hasn't been sidelined, because that's sort of foundational to then being in a good place to look after her as well. So
well said. It when it comes to your relationships through this, I mean, statistically, we can see a big rise in people separating in the first year. And then again, I think in year 5, so there's something else that goes on about 5 years in. But that first year is a very intense year. And the key to staying connected and staying close is getting in the trenches together, is actually teamwork. And when you go through something as intense as not just the pregnancy and the birth, but also early parenting, that first year, and if you can lean in on each other, and partners sort of really step up on the other side, because that feeding journey is so intense, because babies' tummies are so tiny and they need to be fed a lot, and they metabolize the milk very quickly, and we want them to thrive, and that supports their growth. Then partners taking over all those other parts of it and getting in with the baby and settling, and helping them to get to sleep and taking them for walks and things like that really helps you not just get through it, but potentially to increase your intimacy, which is what you're describing there, Al. Well done, you two. Well, look at your beautiful girl. She's been very, very good. For those listening, you really should have a look on YouTube at this girl. She's just divine. But I want to thank you both for sharing your beautiful story, because these stories like Kanny and Al's are inspiring, because they can help us to see what's possible, that people, don't just have to grin and bear their way through it, that they can actually utilize some powerful tools, some powerful understandings, harnessing the mind, and in Kanny's case, the mind and the breath, to get through birth under all circumstances. Fortunately for you two, there was no real complexity, but it is an opportunity for you as families to upgrade your whole system. Birth is the doorway into parenting, and Mother Nature wants you to discover that you are far more than what you think. And with a bit of support and prep, and you did some beautiful prep with the yoga and then the Transform Your Birth course, those types of preparations can really support couples to know exactly what their role is. Al knew exactly what he needed to do, and Kanny knew what her role is, and they've got the beautiful Willa as a bonus for the whole journey. So thanks everybody for listening. And once again, we'll have another great story and episode for you next week. So tune in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. It is a place where you can learn, get support and grow into your role as a parent. Why not take advantage of a special gift for all pregnant women at transformyourbirth.com.au? Or if you have children, we have a gift for parents also.